Let's go even deeper. There's something most people never realize until it's too late. Every fight you avoid with the wrong person protects the love you'll give to the right one. Read that again. Every ounce of energy you waste trying to fix someone who doesn't want to heal, every sleepless night spent replaying arguments in your head, every time you compromise your truth to avoid setting her off, you're draining the love you could be pouring into yourself, into your mission, into the partner who's actually ready. Because love is not supposed to be war. Yes, love takes work, but the right kind of work. Not tiptoeing, not survival, not constant emotional rescue missions. The real work is showing up as yourself and being seen. It's letting someone witness your edges and choosing each other anyway. It's having hard conversations that build bridges, not burn them down. So if your idea of love is based on chasing, fixing, and proving, ask yourself, where did I learn that? Because often, our normal is just what we survived. If you were raised in emotional chaos, if love felt like walking through a minefield, you'll seek out those patterns without even realizing it. But here's the wild thing. You don't have to repeat it. You can rewire what love means. You can teach your nervous system that peace doesn't mean danger, that consistency isn't boring, it's secure. And you do that by choosing peace over performance. It starts small. The first time you don't respond to a baiting text, the first time you walk away from a screaming match, the first time you say, "This doesn't feel healthy and I deserve better." Those tiny moments build something profound inside you. Not arrogance, not coldness, but self-respect. And when you operate from that place, everything shifts. Suddenly, the people who once seemed magnetic, the chaos, the drama, the manipulation, lose their pull. You see it for what it is, a distraction, a trap, a cycle. You stop being a fixer. You start being a filter. And you don't let just anyone into your world, not because you're guarded, but because you've earned your peace. Now, some people might say, but shouldn't we fight for love? And my answer is, only if it's fighting with, not fighting against. Fighting with someone means facing problems together. It means being on the same team. Fighting against someone means your ego is more important than the relationship. You have to ask, is this conflict moving us closer or tearing us apart? Because real love doesn't demand war. It demands maturity. It demands two people who face themselves and are willing to grow without destroying each other in the process. That's what separates boys from men. Not how loud you get, but how deeply you can listen, how calmly you can hold tension, how quickly you can return to presence after pain. And yes, that takes work. It takes time. You will mess up. You'll react. You'll say things you regret. But the difference is you own it. You apologize, you reflect, you evolve. That's the kind of man women feel safe with. Not because you're flawless, but because you're accountable. And the women who aren't ready for that, they'll leave, or push you away, or accuse you of being too cold, too boring, too emotional. That's okay. Let them go. Because on the other side of that loss is a relationship built not on chaos, but on clarity, where fighting becomes rare, where emotions are expressed, not weaponized, where peace isn't just a goal, it's the baseline. Imagine a relationship where you can disagree without destroying each other. You feel safe being honest, even about hard things. You're not scared of emotional outbursts because there are none. You're not fixing each other. You're supporting each other. That's what happens when two regulated nervous systems meet. That's what happens when the masculine becomes anchored and the feminine becomes free. And that's what you deserve. So, to every man listening, stop trying to win fights. Start winning peace. Stop proving your strength through anger. Start showing it through stillness. Stop chasing the storm. Start becoming the mountain. Because when you become unshakable, emotionally, mentally, spiritually, you don't just transform your relationships, you transform your life. Now, let's talk about something most men have never been taught. And it's the single biggest shift that changed how I show up in relationships. You don't need to win arguments. You need to become unshakable. That doesn't mean being passive or weak. It means being so grounded in your own peace that no storm can pull you into chaos. Here's the reality. Sometimes a woman just needs to express. She needs to vent, to feel, to move the emotions through her body. And your job in that moment isn't to fix it or debate it. Your job is to listen without ego. If she's upset and you immediately defend yourself, "That's not what I meant," or "Why are you overreacting?" you've already lost. You're fighting for your image, not the relationship. But if you can sit still, breathe, and say something as simple as, "I hear you. That wasn't my intention, but I can see how it felt that way. Let's figure this out together." You shift the energy instantly. She doesn't want to be right. She wants to feel safe to feel. The masculine mistake is trying to argue emotions with logic. But emotion doesn't respond to logic. It responds to presence, to stillness, to the sense that you're not running, not defending, not collapsing. In those moments, she's not testing your facts. She's testing your foundation. Can you hold the tension without lashing out? Can you stay present even when you feel misunderstood? Can you keep your voice low, your heart open, your words clear? If you can, you're not just solving an argument, you're building trust. And here's where it gets even deeper. Every time you escalate, you teach her that you can't handle her emotions. Every time you match her intensity, you teach her that you're not safe during storms. But every time you stay grounded, you teach her the opposite, that you can be the calm in the chaos, that she can bring her full self to you, and you won't punish her for it. Let me give you something I wish I'd learned in my 20s. Women don't want a perfect man. They want a regulated man. Someone who can feel the fire without throwing fuel on it. Someone who can hold space, not because he has no emotion, but because he's done the inner work to master it. Now, of course, this doesn't mean you stay silent forever or swallow every emotion. That's not healthy either. But you respond with clarity, not impulse. You lead with patience, not pride. Sometimes that even means stepping away, not in anger, but in wisdom, saying, "I need a few minutes to collect my thoughts. I'll come back when I can speak from love." That kind of man, that kind of energy, it transforms relationships, not just romantic ones, but every relationship in your life. Because here's the truth, the way you handle conflict with women is usually how you handle conflict with everyone. It's a mirror. Are you reactive or reflective? Do you fight to win or connect? Do you crave peace or control? And that brings us to one of the hardest pills to swallow, especially for men who've worked hard to grow. Not every woman is ready for a healthy relationship. Sometimes, no matter how regulated, present, or kind you are, she'll still pull you into chaos. Not because she's evil or broken, but because she hasn't done the work. She's still running old stories, old wounds, old patterns. And no matter how much love you bring, it's never enough. That's when you have to stop trying to be her healer and start protecting your peace. Because here's a law of energy. When two people meet, the one with the strongest emotional field will influence the other. If she's rooted in drama and you're not deeply grounded, you will be pulled into it. But if you're rooted in peace and she's just reacting temporarily, you can lift her out of it. The question is, who's more stable? So if you keep finding yourself in conflict after conflict, walking on eggshells, feeling drained,
It's time to zoom out. Not just what am I doing wrong, but what energy am I allowing into my space? You're not meant to constantly manage someone else's nervous system. You're not meant to shrink so someone else doesn't explode. That's not love. That's emotional babysitting. And if you grew up in a home where love was chaotic, where arguing was normal or affection was unpredictable, you might unconsciously seek that same energy in adult relationships. You mistake emotional highs and lows for passion. You confuse anxiety with chemistry. You think peace means boredom. But here's the truth. Peace is the ultimate luxury. It's not boring. It's not weak. It's what allows love to breathe. Without constant conflict, without walking on glass, without the roller coaster. So let me be clear. If she's always starting fights, blaming you, gaslighting you, punishing you emotionally, no matter how much you improve yourself, it will never be enough. That's not your mirror. That's a lesson. And you're allowed to leave. In fact, leaving is the most powerful thing you can do sometimes, because it teaches your nervous system something it's never known, that you are safe to walk away from what hurts, that you don't have to stay in chaos to prove your strength. That's what makes you a strong man. Not your arguments, not your dominance, but your ability to stay rooted in peace, even if it means being alone. Because once you find that peace, you'll never trade it for drama again.
There's an uncomfortable truth that most men don't want to admit. When it comes to arguments with women, you lose even when you win. You lose when you're wrong, that's obvious, but you also lose when you're right. You lose the connection, the peace, the emotional safety, and eventually you realize winning the argument isn't what you needed. I used to be the guy who always wanted to explain himself, to be heard, to prove his point. I thought if I laid out the logic clearly enough, it would solve everything. But life taught me something different. The real victory is in never engaging in the conflict in the first place. Not because women are irrational or weak, but because they experience the world through emotions more vividly than men do. And when you respond with frustration, sarcasm, or even just a sharp tone, they don't just hear the words, they feel the energy, and they'll return it tenfold. This isn't a trick, it's a life skill, one that has brought me more peace, more clarity, and more harmony than I ever thought possible. I'm not sharing this because I've always had it figured out. I'm sharing it because I didn't, and I had to learn the hard way. But here's where the journey really starts. It starts with who you choose. I believe 90% of a peaceful relationship comes down to selecting the right person from the beginning. The biggest mistake most men make is trying to make it work with someone who was never compatible with them to begin with. Just because you're attracted to her doesn't mean she's the one you should build with. Not everyone is meant to be your partner. Not everyone deserves your time, energy, or emotional investment. If she's confrontational, if she's quick to anger, if she thrives on drama, no matter how calm or emotionally mature you are, that relationship will always feel like walking on eggshells. And that's when you need to stop and ask yourself, why am I drawn to this kind of woman? Why do I keep letting chaos into my life? I had to ask myself those questions. The answers weren't easy to hear, but they were necessary. The truth is, a lot of women carry unresolved emotional pain, especially those who are young, inexperienced, or haven't done the deep work on themselves. But the good news is, they show you those signs early. You just have to be paying attention. Watch closely in the early stages. Is she easily triggered? Does she constantly test your love or demand emotional performances? Does she turn small misunderstandings into major emotional storms? If the answer is yes, let it go early. Don't try to catch the falling plate. Think of dating like an extended hiring process. You're interviewing someone for a long-term role in your life, possibly the most important one. And if the candidate shows signs of instability, drama, or emotional volatility in the first few weeks, a wise company would kindly move on. You should too. To do that, you need something most men lack: optionality, the power to walk away. If you believe that this is your only shot, you'll put up with anything. You'll ignore red flags, you'll make excuses, and you'll sacrifice your peace just to hold on to something that was never meant to last. Worse, you might convince yourself that love means fixing someone, that if you just love her harder, or stay longer, or say the right words, she'll change. But love is not rehabilitation. You're not a therapist, and she's not your project. Another trap is getting emotionally attached too quickly. You barely know her, but you're already imagining the future. You're hooked on the dopamine rush of connection, of intimacy, of attention. And before you know it, you've given her emotional leverage long before she's earned it. You have to detach emotion from observation. Only when your mind is clear can you truly assess, is this someone I can build a peaceful life with? Let's say now you've made the right choice. You found a woman who is kind, emotionally mature, and communicative. Does that mean you'll never argue again? Unfortunately, no. Because most conflicts in a relationship don't start because she's emotional or unreasonable. They start because you, the man, aren't aware of how you're showing up. It's subtle. You might not yell, you might not insult, but if your voice carries even a slight edge of frustration, annoyance, or judgment, she'll feel it instantly, and she'll react. You may think you're being rational or direct, but to her, it sounds cold, condescending, or even hostile, and boom, she's on defense. You're confused, she's upset, and now you're both spiraling. This is why you have to learn what I call emotional clarity in your tone. You need to clean your tone. Strip it of sarcasm, irritation, passive aggressiveness, or hidden judgment. Speak to her the way you'd want someone to speak to a child who's hurting, with calm, steady compassion. Not because she's a child, but because it keeps both of you safe. Because here's the truth. Women amplify and mirror emotional energy. They're emotional reflectors. You bring irritation, they reflect chaos. You bring chaos, they reflect war. And once that cycle starts, it's almost impossible to stop until someone breaks down. Now, you might be thinking, come on, just a little tone shift and suddenly there's an argument? Isn't that overreacting? I get it. I used to think the same thing. But here's what I've learned. Trying to convince a woman that her emotional reaction is too much rarely ends well. You can't logic someone out of how they feel, but you can control the input. You can regulate your tone. You can adjust your energy. And when you do that, something amazing happens. Peace becomes the norm, not the exception.